Let me get us started here. I am Kathy Kind and serve as a pastor at Camp Hill. And this evening, we are recording this meeting so that if there's a need for collecting information from this, if we have questions, if folks can't be here this evening but want to hear the information, we have access to it. The other piece that I do want to let you know is that we are hoping to have as much conversation as possible over the course of an hour. And we're hopeful that in the course of this hour, we can cover much ground together. And so thank you so much for joining us. And I believe that we are going to begin with prayer with Matthew Peter Fritz. Is that correct, Pastor Anna? So Matthew, if you would be willing to unmute yourself and open us in prayer.
Jesus, we humbly come before you tonight as members of two congregations, but of one holy body. And we ask that you would be with us as we vision and dream and question and try to discern the movement of your Spirit, that in all of the work that we do, we would bring glory to your great name. Amen.
So friends, Matthew is our Camp Hill UMC vice chair of our council. Our chair and the chair of the Grace Church Council are also going to play some important roles tonight. And so we're really thankful that you're willing to serve this evening. My name is Anna Lehman Knox, and I am the community pastor at Camp Hill United Methodist. And so privileged to be with you this evening, along with the other pastors. And so I'm going to share a little bit about the backstory of how we got to this moment. Now, our hope had been that everyone who attended this meeting would have received a document called the Calvary Story. And we're aware that unfortunately, some people have it and some people don't. And so we're going to do the best we can to try to summarize it for you. But we will do our absolute best to ensure that that document is gotten out to the wider, both of our wider congregations, definitely after this meeting. If you would like for us to try to email it to you right now, we are very happy to do that. All you need to do is put your email into the, Leslie, our communications director, wonderfully put the link in the chat window. You're a rock star. Thank you for that. So, so if you haven't read it yet, and you'd like to sort of follow along, I'm not going to read the whole thing out loud because you could read it yourself. But as I summarize it, if you'd like to look at it, you can click on the link in the chat window. We hope that's helpful. This is a document that we have been updating pretty much weekly for the last 3 or 4 months. And so every time we look at it, we add something new about the story of how we've arrived at this time and in this part of the decision-making process. And so it's an evolving document that will continue to grow as we continue to discern together. But you can hopefully click on the current document and get a little sense of where we're headed. So in short, Pastor Jason and Pastor Kathy and I all had separate conversations with various ministry partners and leaders over the past few years and into this fall about what expanded impactful ministry in West Shore looks like. And we've been bearing in mind all kinds of factors, including our identified mission fields and particular gifts for ministry that our congregations and our leadership have, what kind of space we have available for various forms of ministry in our current church buildings, what our ministry partnerships in the community look like. And those questions have converged together and have sort of been blossoming as we together as pastors had slowly over the fall been learning more and more about the Calvary Church closing. I became first aware of the closing during our West Shore cluster meeting of pastors in September, and I think that's sort of when it started to become more sharply on the radar screen for Pastor Kathy and Pastor Jason too. And so we just kind of started having conversations with one another about what we knew about ministry in Lemoyne, what we knew of each other and our congregations, and what we knew of this Calvary building. And there were connecting conversations in the midst of all of that wondering about other things in the community, like how to house recovery groups during COVID, and how possibly to partner with a food pantry that was needing space, and how to encourage some current ministry partnerships that we already have, like one with Salt and Light Youth Ministry, and they were reimagining what their ministry looked like in the midst of COVID. And it's important that you know tonight that no final decisions have been made about the building or about any of the ministries that are related to it that we've been discussing. No decisions have been made about this proposed partnership. That's why it's a proposed partnership, and it's why we want to discuss it with you. But we did start to realize in this process that there might be a lot of things that God is inviting us to do together that would lead to a much greater ministry impact than we currently have. And so we have just kept asking questions. We had many meetings with the conference trustees about the Calvary building and the ministry that had been there and the daycare that continues to be housed there. And it truly has been kind of mind and spirit blowing with how many and how quickly doors have been opening to us as we've been asking questions about possible uses and ministries together in that space. The conference trustees had the building on the market for $479,000, in addition to a small adjoining plot of land that has a house, like a home trailer on it, that had been inhabited, is not now, it's empty now. But after many conversations with the trustees and after a lot of prayer, they have agreed wholeheartedly to gift us, as two churches working in partnership, the Calvary building and the land and the trailer as well, all of it for use in ministry together, if we are willing to receive it. Right? So honestly, this has all unfolded in a series of surprises to us as leaders, joyful ones, but it's been a lot of surprise in terms of the doors that have been opening. And so we are really wanting to focus our minds, focus our hearts and relationships on what God might be inviting us to become. You know, this has been a season during COVID when there's been a lot of constriction, a lot of commentary about all of the things that we can't do anymore like we used to be able to do. But this conversation has been one that has been opening us up to be seeking after how God is calling us faithfully to be in ministry in the future. And we don't have all of the answers tonight. There will be many gaps that we still need to discern through. But we do have a strong sense that God is doing something really powerful here, and that we need diligently to be paying attention and to be taking one faithful step at a time to discern the way forward together. So I hope that that is a slightly helpful summary of where we have been. And Jason's going to pick up now and share a little bit about some of the specifics about what we have done so far.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Jason Schwartzman. I am the pastor of Grace Church in Lemoyne. And just like Anna said, started to have these conversations, and then we found out that we were all having these conversations. So we said, let's talk together. What that led to was we have toured the building first first Anna and Kathy and I just toured the building to see what was inside. What does it even look like in there? And so we did that. And then there was a slightly larger group that toured the building again at the beginning of December to really dream about what it could be used for. You know, what sorts of things are needed in this ministry field. At that tour of the building, Chum's facilities manager gave us some initial cost estimates on some building repairs that might be needed. Those require a lot more research. It was just kind of like hey, this is what I think this would cost about. So certainly a much more educated guess than I would be able to provide, but we need more research into those guesses as well. We have also identified a law firm that we think will be able to help us set up any partnership agreement, if there is one, between the two churches and sharing the building and what that looks like. I shouldn't say most recently, this is now most recently, but our councils met together recently, and we'll have a little bit more of a summary about that later on. Our councils had a joint meeting. We broke up into smaller groups and we asked questions about, like, what are you most excited about? What are you concerned about? What are the things that you need in order to make a better decision? So our councils met to just kind of bat this idea around a little bit. It was, when I say, I'm not one for church meetings, but this one was really good because it was just, the spirit was present and there was just an air of optimism in the virtual room that night. Yeah, we all had legitimate concerns that we brought up, but the way that they were brought up was in such a spirit of cooperation and hope, and it was just a beautiful time together. As far as the conference trustees, I'm pretty sure this is all review information. We are a part of the Susquehanna Conference of the United Methodist Church, and the conference has a board of trustees. And just like a board of trustees at a local church, they would be responsible for the property that the conference owns. And so in those conversations with the conference trustees, as Anna said, they have agreed to gift us this building that was on the market for $479,000. They have also verbally extended employment contracts with the on-site caretaker and the secretary through June 30th. So the secretary works really whenever needed. It's a minuscule expense. The on-site caretaker is there and helps out the daycare that's there, and of course has been caring for the building. So their employment contracts have been extended through June 30th. The conference trustees have also extended the lease with the daycare that is currently operating in the building until at least June 30th. So that's kind of more of the specifics of where we are. And I believe Pastor Kathy is going to lead us into what we're going to do.
Yes, so as we gather information and as we have conversation this evening, I'm hoping that we've all heard that this is not the last of conversations. This is really still very early in our process of discernment. And so we have a number of steps that are ahead of us and some more homework that we need to do. And so we're having this town hall this evening. We're anticipating having at least 2 additional town hall gatherings to sort through questions and information. And if we find that we need more than 2 gatherings, then we'll continue to schedule them until we've had an opportunity to really get to the bottom of our questions and concerns and have clarity of vision and mission. In a couple of weeks, not even a couple of weeks, it's like a week, we are having folks from both councils, so from the council at Grace and from the ULC at Camp Hill. We have folks joining with the pastors for a day of visioning, and that's going to be led by Gary Shockley, who serves as the Director of Equipping Vital Congregations for the conference. And so he's been tasked with walking us through a very clear process of discernment. And that discernment will really be rooted in a vision for ministry and what that looks like. And then the conversation will be around if the former Calvary building is appropriate for a shared ministry, for a shared vision. And so it's all a process. We also think that in addition to the kind of guesses of and estimates of information that we have regarding some of the physical plant itself at the former Calvary Church, that we should hire an inspector, we should hire another professional who can give us more specific quotes on what the physical needs and concerns would be, what the upcoming capital expenses might be, any of the delayed capital improvement that might need to happen. And so we are wanting to have another opportunity to collect that kind of data and to collect it again with as much specificity as possible, because we know that the reality is one of the questions that we all have is, what is the cost? What is the financial cost of this building? And so we want to be able to have very real answers and less guesses for us. The other thing that we believe we're going to need to do is, after the day of visioning, if it seems as though the Calvary building makes sense for our vision and for a shared ministry, we need to have some real conversations around what renovations might need to happen in that building in order to house the ministries that would be as a part of our vision. And so we would want to engage with someone who can give us clear estimates on what the real costs would be for any of those renovations. So we're needing to seek after a couple of different professionals. One for capital concerns that exist in the building itself, period. And then the other is for any renovating so that the building is in the configuration for housing ministry. We also want to make sure, and I believe that both Pastor Anna and Jason have already said this, and so this is another opportunity for us to hear. Our purpose this evening is not to make any decisions, but rather we want to make sure that we're talking about the possibility of ministry together and the reality that might or could include acquiring a building. And those decisions are going to have to be made in the future after we've had a chance to collect more information and also widen the circle of prayer for discernment and clarity of what ministry might look like together. we want to make sure that this evening we are providing information and we're receiving information so that we can better provide answers and the kinds of information that we all need in order to make the most faithful decisions as we move forward. So that's where we are at this point. That's where we're headed. And as you've heard, we recently had a joint meeting with the Council from Grace and the ULC from Camp Hill. And we have the chairpersons, Kim from Camp Hill and Leslie from Grace, who are both going to share a little bit about their takeaways from those conversations that we shared together. And so I'm not sure, Kim, Leslie, who wants to go first, but what I'm going to recommend is maybe Leslie, would you be willing to start? And then Kim, you could finish.
Okay, fortunately, I took some notes at that meeting. So as they said before, we met as a large group, but we were divided into 3 different groups, roughly about 8 people each. And we went off for several minutes at 8 to 10 minutes at a time. And we really looked at 3 different questions. And then we came back and we shared those. And the first question was essentially what were we excited about? And there was a lot of things, some being meeting the needs of all people in the community, especially of Lemoyne, space to create new ideas, extra room if conflicts arise. Perhaps a group wants to meet at the church and there's no room available. This building may be able to provide that room. It was mentioned that this is huge, scary, and there's a lot of unfulfilled possibilities. And the space, God is inhabiting that space, and he's going to guide us how to utilize it. Keeping the daycare, after school tutoring, utilizing the kitchen for meals, dinners. People were also excited about the synergy of doing something as 2 churches united to carry this out, and what the ministry impact may have on the neighborhood, and especially with the Washington Heights School and the new apartments that are going to be going up across the street. And that one of the other things was that we're looking, this isn't a forced thing, that we're looking into this partnership willingly. It wasn't forced upon us. It's a willingness to partner together to carry out whatever missions we are going to do. And then our second question was, what are we most concerned about? And the number one thing, of course, was the finances. The places that each church is in, exactly what we're going to have to come up with in the event of repairs and remodeling, because as you know, or we've experienced at least at Grace, with older buildings, you start to do a project and you get in and it's not up to code. And then you have to do 1, 2, and 3 to bring it up to code. And so there's a lot of unknown expenses that we may not even know, even if we plan, we're going to do this, this, and this. Once it starts, there's always that unknown hidden expenses that we might know. And we were also concerned about, and the town halls are hopefully going to take care of this, about being open to our communication, or open communication to our congregations. so that they will at whatever point have input into the decisions that are being made and keeping our congregations informed and getting people involved and keeping everyone excited. How do we get started? So that's kind of where we're in the getting started phase, I think, without these meetings and talking to people. And I guess the last question was, what one piece of information do we need to continue to our next steps? And Pastor Kathy mentioned some of those, and that's really getting the professionals in to look at the building, tell us what we need, and give us more, maybe not accurate, but a little more accurate costs of what needs to be done or what is essential, things like that. And then after each question, we all got back together and then we shared those with one another and had people add a few more things. But it was kind of interesting that all three groups had fairly similar. It might have been worded different, but each group on each question, to me, I found it interesting that we all came back with very, very similar answers. So that's pretty much all I have.
Leslie, thank you so much for sharing. Kim, would
Yep.
you be willing to share some reflections as well?
Sure, and thank you, Leslie. You did an awesome job capturing the breakouts and a summary of what happened that night. I'll step back from it a little bit. For me personally, I went into it super anxious and a little nervous because you didn't know if you're walking into a group. I think we had 20 people, right? I think, Jason, you have 11 people and we have 9, so that's 20 leadership members. And I'm like, okay, I'm doing the analysis going, okay, there's going to be X number super positive and X number super negative. And, I was incredibly anxious about it into the meeting. And when we all recognize that nobody knows for sure, and we all had the same questions, the feeling was awesome. And you could feel the spirit moving in the group throughout the evening. And I think it was evident that we all felt there's something in a partnership here and we need to be working together. And if it's the building that brought us together, amen. Whether it's a building that we go away with, we're not sure yet. But I think the people are open to where God is leading us as a partnership or a group together or teams to worship together. And I found it incredibly interesting. A lot of times doing these types of meetings, especially over Zoom and whatnot, is very, very difficult. And you get into a breakout and nobody says anything. And I was with Jason and our group, I think we were fighting to talk most of the evening, and everybody had something to offer on the 3 questions that Leslie articulated so well. And people had a lot on their mind. And I think we could have gone for 3 or 4 or 5 hours with ideas. So I'll step back and summarize in that I think we have hundreds of ideas. I think we know God is moving us here. We don't know that we need a building to do the ministry work, but we're open to the idea that says there is a match between the ministries and what I think is an awesome opportunity, being gifted a building like that, but we still have a lot of work to go do. So what's the financial plan? What all the things that we've articulated tonight, and what does that look like? But the Spirit's moving here is how I would summarize it. And I believe we have an incredible group of people and 2 awesome congregations that will live into this, and we'll figure it out as we go in through the next steps. Pastor Kathy, I'll turn it back to you, I think. Thank you.
Kim, thank you very much. Pastor Jason, did you have any more you wanted to add from that meeting?
Such a great summary of everything that happened. I'm just going to add just a very few things to that. It was mentioned that there are apartments going in right across the street from Calvary Church. That is true. In the old Lemoyne Middle School, there is going to be an apartment complex right there. Those are new residents. Do they know about Jesus? We don't know. But we certainly know that that's an area that we would be uniquely positioned for ministry if we discern that the building is a necessity for us. Washington Heights Elementary School is the poorest school in the West Shore School District. It is right up the hill from Calvary Church. Once again, uniquely positioned for ministry if we discern that the Calvary building is something that we need in order to introduce more people to Jesus. And that's what I'm most excited about. What I saw at that meeting was that we are two healthy congregations. And so many times in the United Methodist Church, when there is some sort of partnership that develops, it's usually one church limping to another stronger church. And in this case, we're both running together. And I think that is what really excites me. That's what really excited the group in the discerning process with the council meetings, that we don't have to do this, but we want to, because we want more people to know about the grace and love of Jesus. And we think that this might be a way to offer that. The very last thing that I'll say about this is since the trustees, our conference trustees, are willing to gift us this building, it would become ours. It would become property of Camp Hill and Grace Partnership, whatever that would look like. It would become ours. If we make a really good faith effort in ministry, I'm talking years down the road, if we make a really good faith effort in ministry and decide there's no viable path here, that building is an asset that belongs to the Grace Camp Hill Partnership. Therefore, we would be allowed to sell that building. I don't want that to happen. And neither does Pastor Anna or neither does Pastor Kathy, because here's the thing. If we sell the building, we're saying there was no viable ministry there. And we're saying that people didn't really meet Jesus in the ways that we wanted people to encounter Jesus. And so we don't want that to happen. But I feel as though it's necessary to say that if there is a good faith effort in ministry, the building is ours. It belongs to us. Thank you to Leslie and Kim. You did an amazing job. I was ticking things off in my note card, and you said them all. So no need for me to say them again. So I'm gonna pass the reins on to Anna again.
Okay, thanks so much, Jason. That was really helpful. So friends, we know you probably still have a lot of questions. We would like to invite you to start thinking of those questions while we begin to answer some questions that we've already received from folks, some of whom are at this meeting and some of whom might not be, but just sent their questions in advance. So just to start, as Pastor Kathy mentioned, a lot of folks have questions about finances, right? Like, what are Camp Hill UMC's current finances? What is our situation? What is Grace's situation? So I'm very aware that we all need to be reading through those finances very carefully. and discerning through that. And so Camp Hill's year-end 2020 finances are pretty much ready. We just need to do some formatting in order to get them out to the wider world so that they're pretty. Not the numbers, but the structure. So the numbers are fairly pretty too. They're okay. So Grace Church's finances will be ready in the next 2 weeks. And so, so we will be sharing that information publicly as soon as possible. We've had some questions about whether or not our 2020 income was met, whether it was met what was expected. So from Camp Hill's perspective, we are extremely, extremely thankful for the generosity of the church in this pandemic season, especially. We feel that we are very fortunate. The fourth quarter of 2020 for us did show a 21% decline from last year's numbers. However, we ended the year in the black. And so we feel very, very thankful. And our first month of giving in 2021 has been above average and above expectations. And so we think that some of that giving was end of year giving from 2020 that just didn't quite make it in time. And some of it obviously is just continued giving into the new year. And so we're feeling very thankful for that. So that's just a brief summary on that. There have been some questions asked about what our long-term plan is for the property. So again, we're kind of taking a step back there in the sense that we're still asking questions like, what kind of ministry partnership is God calling us into? And what would be possible with the building that would not be possible any other way, right? So, we're still discerning through the building. And while we're discerning through whether or not the building is meant for us, we are also putting together a document that has some of the visions that we have been imagining and dreaming about as leadership who've been in the building so far. And we're organizing it in terms of 2020 during COVID, or sorry, 2021 during COVID, 2021 post-COVID, 2022, 2023. And we're organizing it according to what part of the building we think a particular ministry might be able to be housed in. So, so we'll also be sharing some of those vision documents as we move forward. So there are sort of short-term goals that might be possible, and then there are longer-term possibilities that might require more renovation, right? Some of the things might be possible just to move in and do right away. Other things would need some significant renovation. We've been asked, where is our future revenue stream coming from? So you've heard us mention a few times tonight that in order for this partnership to be possible in conjunction with the building, we would need to work with a lawyer to draft a partnership agreement. And in that partnership agreement, we would decide together how much in terms of percentages each church would be able to contribute from our budgets, from our endowments, from fundraising, whatever ways we chose to raise funds. We would make an agreement on who is taking responsibility for various aspects of that work. We're also aware that the Equipping Vital Congregations office in the conference office has funds that are available that we would apply for that are for just exactly this type of ministry, for creative partnerships, for imagining new dreams together. And Gary Shockley, who's working with us on this project, you heard Pastor Kathy mention that he'll be guiding a discernment day, a vision day with us. He has let us know that when we're ready, if we decide to move forward, that he would receive an application from us and discern through that with us for future funding. So that's one option. And then, of course, depending on what we choose to do with the building, there might be additional nonprofit grants that could be pursued as well. One of the ideas that has been discussed in relationship to the building is the concept of dinner church. And at Camp Hill, we have for about a year and a half now been discerning through whether or not to launch a dinner church and what that would look like in the West Shore community. And I understand that Grace Church has actually been wondering the same thing. So, so as we've been coming together with some of these ideas, we were pretty excited to hear that we had a similar vision, at least in that area. And so there are lots of possibilities here for how dinner church might connect with this partnership. Perhaps it's simply that we share in dinner church in the community somehow together. Perhaps it's that dinner church is hosted in the fellowship hall of the Calvary building. But that is an area, a quite specific area of ministry that we already know that both churches are excited about, that we would like to pursue further. Another question that has arisen that is very different than the last one is that, I'll just read it to you. In light of the sexuality issues currently within the United Methodist Church, are Grace and Camp Hill on the same page concerning these questions, or is there a possibility with church split that there could not be joint cooperation between our two churches in the future? Okay. So this is a big question, and I think it's fair. As pastors, we think it's fair to say that Grace and Camp Hill churches are both congregations that have a wide spectrum of theological perspective represented within them. And we believe that speaks really positively to our capacity to cooperate together through this ongoing wider conversation that the United Methodist Church is having. We also think it's really important to note that the Susquehanna Conference's annual conference, which is the yearly gathering of our region, all the pastors and lay people in our region. That conference in June has been turned into a Zoom conference, and there will be no controversial conversation during that Zoom conference. Similarly, there are conversations about General Conference, which is the global 4-year conference in the United Methodist Church, where we're not 100% sure if that conference is going to meet as it's scheduled to in August either. That could also turn out to be a Zoom conference with limited conversation. So while we're very aware, as always, that there is a process that the United Methodist Church is going through that may involve, that does involve splitting in various ways, at the moment, we're kind of in a little bit of a holding pattern. And we are just generally really excited to be working on ways to work together that allow us to continue in ministry. One last question, and then we're going to open it up to you, I believe. So there was a question about the trailer on the Calvary property. So apparently there's some information out there that the trailer is occupied. It's not. The conference trustees have cleaned it out and it is sitting vacant. It was placed on the market. They've since removed it from the market in their agreement to gift it to us. It sits just behind the building beyond the alley from the main building of the church. So there was income that was coming in from that trailer prior to the decision to put it on the market. And should we receive that property as well, we could decide if we wanted to host a renter or if we wanted to remove the trailer and use the land for some other kind of use. Okay, so that's a lot of information, we know, and there are many more questions, we know. So I'm going to turn it over to Kathy.
Yes, so at this point, I just wrote a little note in the chat inviting you, if you have questions, to put those into the chat. The other piece of information I just want to reiterate is that with these questions that arise, We may not be able to answer everything this evening, but we do want to capture your questions so that we can follow up with the responses to your questions in our frequently asked question document that will be updated on a regular basis. If you have something that you would like to ask, I'm also happy for you to raise your hand using the raise hand feature, and I'll see that, and we can call on you to have you ask your questions. So I see some questions coming into the chat, and I'm going to do a quick scan of the room for hands. Okay, so pastors, let me have us review these questions and see how we want to jump in and respond. So in light of the United Methodist churches that were closed in Harrisburg, it may be prudent to look at possible locations in the city. Pastor Anna or Pastor Jason, do you want to respond to that?
Sure. I can't see Jason right now. Oh, there you are. Okay, so feel free to hop in. I can speak for Camp Hill in the sense that before I arrived, I've been at Camp Hill for 4.5 years, and before I arrived, there was quite a concerted effort to develop a ministry partnership with one of the churches that has since closed, I believe, in Harrisburg. That conversation at the time did not advance. It was quite a controversial conversation, as I understand it. Again, I mentioned it was before my time at the church. There has, as we all know, been a struggle in our community with the sort of East Shore, West Shore divide. And I think that that divide is something that we would very much like to break down more, and to be a part of that bridge building instead. I am not personally aware of exactly which buildings are still available. I'm aware that there were some that were under contract. There was one that was extremely expensive to fix. And of course, the Journey Church is housed in one of them. One of them was taken on as a second campus by, was it Lingelstown Life, Kathy?
Yes.
Which one took
Yes,
Rockville?
it was.
Yeah. So we can definitely do some more research into that. But at the moment, I'm not confident that any of those buildings would suit our purposes better than the one that is already available, but we'll definitely look.
Okay. I'm scrolling down through your questions, and one that I recall was, is there a working organ? And we understand that the organ does work. There is an organ in the sanctuary.
Yes, it's a pipe organ. I played it. We don't know what quality it is, and we don't know if it's the kind of asset that we would be able to sell or not. But yes, it is very much alive and pumping.
Kathy, there was one question that was above a few of the other ones that talked about how the location would dovetail with New Hope Ministries in Lemoyne and any other ministries that exist. One of the things that I will say about that is, if you're familiar with Lemoyne, you know that there is a footbridge that basically connects New Hope Ministries and Calvary Church. They're steps away from each other. Grace has a very, very good working relationship with New Hope Ministries. I can't imagine that they would see this as competition per se. We're on the same team. So I think that the proposed location would be a very positive thing in expanding that relationship with New Hope.
Yeah, I'll chime in on that too. Chum also has a brilliant, a life-giving relationship with New Hope. Sometimes I feel like they're on speed dial, yeah, they've been a ministry partner of ours for a long time. They're on our list of missional giving. We give to them every year. Yeah, I think that could be a tremendous asset.
Great, thank you. The other questions that have arisen, one of them includes, have we been in partnership with the former members of the Calvary Church? And at this point, we have not, but Pastor Anna, we have a list of the former members.
We do. Several months ago, we got a list from the conference office of all of the addresses and names of former members. And so I believe one of them has already joined Grace Church, which is lovely. So, so it has definitely been on our list of things to do, to reach out to those former members and to see if they would be interested in ministry together.
Grace has reached out to that same list, Anna. We sent a letter over the summer, and like you said, we did get a former member of Calvary join our church here at Grace, but they didn't know anything about this venture, and so I think it would be worth another correspondence with them.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. And this seems to relate to, I see there's a question, if there's so much opportunity for ministry in Lemoyne, why did they close Calvary? And that's a great question. The Calvary congregation, the congregation was an older congregation that had diminished significantly in size from when it was really thriving. They were struggling. They had not moved to a simplified structure, as we both churches are so privileged to have. And they were really struggling with the dynamic of trying to continually fill all of the committees that are necessary for United Methodist churches with the same people who'd been serving on committees for a very long time. And there was some discontent with how the conference also was handling appointments to that church, as we understand it. And so they got to a point, as we understand it, obviously, I'm sure there are many sides to that conversation and perspectives to be shared, but they got to a point, it seems, where they felt as though they didn't have within themselves the capacity to meet the needs of the community in the way that they wanted to, and the capacity to maintain their congregational life in the way that they wanted to. And so they decided to fold. They still had, I believe, Pastor Kathy, about 66 people still attending there. It was quite a large number of people for a congregation to close. Usually it gets to a much smaller number. But they they gave away their money to a lot of missions, places like Mission Central and New Hope Ministries, and they blessed the community, and they said, we gave it our best try and we're tired. So I don't know that there isn't any ministry to be done. I think it's just that the way that particular group of people had been operating wasn't viable anymore for them.
There are also questions around the confidence that we have in having the people to have ongoing ministries into the future, and how confident we are about that. That's a question I do want to share. I pulled out and put into a different document because I'm not confident that we can accurately answer that question this evening, but I do think that that's something we need to explore. as we explore shared ministry and shared vision to really have a better sense of what that looks like and what kind of mix of volunteers and paid persons we would need. There's also a question around the annual conference and what role they would have when it comes to itinerancy of the clergy and the reality that when there's something big like this that's coming together, that's not an ideal time necessarily for a pastoral change. And so I think that that's a really good question that in our homework doing, we can pose to the district superintendent to receive some feedback. So that's another question that I've captured into another document.
Yes, yes, we may have already mentioned that to the district superintendents.
Yes.
So the last question also relates to the conference, and there's a wondering about the fact that why should it be the church's responsibility to take care of repairs and updating in the building. So the conference trustees, which is the body that Jason spoke about, who are responsible for all the church properties in the conference. There are, Kathy, how many churches in the conference? Like 800?
800 and change.
Yeah. So they are a group of volunteers. They are led by a clergy person, a pastor, who does that work in addition to caring for his congregation. And there are lay people and other clergy who participate on that board willingly and graciously, but it is out of the overflow that they serve in that way. And so, so their primary responsibility really is to ensure that when a property is given up, as Calvary's was, that they sell it or pass it on in some other way to be used for ministry, so that either the funds that they gain from selling the building can be used for ministry or the building itself can be used for ministry. They don't have, unfortunately, the capacity to manage that many properties on an ongoing basis in terms of maintenance and upkeep. And so they are doing that right now. They are ensuring that the custodian is paid. If something terrible happened in the building, they would be the first people that got a call. It is within their responsibility until we make our decision. And if we say no, it will continue to be in their responsibility. But they are transition people. The people who are on the ground in ministry are the ones who would be responsible for deciding how that building is used in the future.
And a question just came in along those lines of what happens to the building if we do not take it on. If we don't take it on, the conference trustees are still in possession of the building, and it will go back on the market and they will sell it to someone who will buy it. And they have a process that they follow for that. There was another question that had come in regarding a specific ministry possibility. I believe there was Spanish language and American Sign Language. I'm going to move that over to our document for some of the visioning conversation, because I think that that's a great what if question that we can prayerfully ponder and discern.
And one thing that I wanted to mention, because there was another one about, are there any plans to appeal to young people? Also, somebody mentioned there may be grants available depending on what kinds of programs are being considered. in light of the previous question about the itinerant system, this defeats some of that, because these are the things that are already springing up, in the 45 minutes that we've been together. These are already things that are springing up from the churches, and you defeat the itinerant system by taking ownership of these ministries. And so the answer, I think, to a lot of these, can we do this? Can we do this? The answer is, yeah, everything is on the table right now, because there are no limits, because we're dreaming together. So yes, there are plans to reach out to young people, and yes, we could end up having sign language services and Spanish speaking services, and yes, we could end up having dinner church in there. Yes.
Yeah, and I do see the comment about dinner, the question about whether it's most effective to have dinner church in a church building or not, and the conversations that have been at CHUM about intentionally trying not to have it in a church building. So one of the bigger conversations around this question of the Calvary building is, is the ministry and the way that we enact that ministry in that space, can we do that in a way that would encourage people who might not step into an institutional church, that maybe those people still would be willing to step foot into the Calvary building in its new iteration? It's, of course, we could hold worship services in there. It has a beautiful sanctuary, however, are there other ways that we could use that building? We all three of us have sanctuaries. We don't necessarily need another one of those in this traditional sense, right? So are there other ways that we can use that space that will make it more accessible as a sacred space to people who are seeking the sacred, but are, for many good reasons, turned off by the traditional church? So it right now it looks very churchy as a building, right? But some of the churchiness depends on, how we enact hospitality in and around the building and what that looks like. And so, so there's some kind of bigger questions I think about, how we shape that moving forward.
There's another question regarding the conference, and this one is about each of our churches and the impact that a building would have on shares of ministry. So our shares of ministry are all calculated based on particular expenses of our congregations. So there would be, because we would have some expenses related to a building and to ministries, so those would be reflected in our finances, which would then be relayed to our statistical reports. And then from those numbers, there could be most likely an impact on shares of ministry because of that. But it wouldn't be the same as, let's say, like what the shares of ministry were for the Calvary Church when they were still open as a church. So it's based on the expenses that we have.
Right, yeah, so it's not like whatever Calvary was paying, we would then have to add that to our bill. In fact, if there are capital expenses related to upkeep in the Calvary building, those are factored out of our shares of ministry calculation. So it may be that we spend more money on programming that happens together as churches for Calvary, but the capital expenses would not add to our shares of ministry. They subtract.
I have to confess, I've not seen the neon cross on the top of the building. Is it still lit?
No, it doesn't. Go ahead, Jason. Tell.
Sure. Kathy, I'm so sad that you have not seen the neon cross. half of it does not light anymore. And so the staff at the former Calvary building decided that half a cross is not a cross. And so they have mercifully decided to retire that neon cross.
I feel like I've missed out on something. Do any of you have a picture?
You have not.
No, I feel like I have missed something, and so I want to know if anybody has a photo to share with me.
You kind of missed out on it. I'm sure that somewhere we can find a picture to get everyone up to speed.
Perfect. I've been trying to scroll through our pages as well, our pages of faces, to see if there were any raised hands, and I don't believe I've missed anybody. But what I wonder is this. We have certainly questions that we've not been able to answer. I also think that it is very possible that as you're settling into sleep this evening, that questions might dance through your head, and you will have some more questions that arise. And so we really are so welcome to the questions and the concerns that you have, as well as the hopes that you have, so that we can make sure that we are sharing all of those, and that we are looking for as much clarity of information as possible. And so I just want to ask you, as you have questions, to make sure that you get those sent to us. Yes, so opportunities for self-funding, like the daycare, organ lessons, music ministry. There really are lots of different possibilities that we could explore for self-funding. The daycare is certainly one, but there's a variety of possibilities that even Gary Shockley was talking through with us in some of our conversations. And so we will certainly be open to possibilities as well. So Pastor Jason.
So as we close tonight, we wanted to just offer a few next steps. First of all, we had like 93 Zoom squares on here tonight, and there's 2 people in a lot of these Zoom squares. So the excitement that is surrounding this is already overwhelming to me. I appreciate so much your willingness to be a part of this, and your willingness to explore where God might lead us together. So thank you, first of all, for that. And in that spirit, I would like to invite you to begin praying right now for the leaders who will be visioning this coming Saturday with Gary Shockley. I'd love to just surround that meeting in a blanket of prayer as we discern what next steps might be and what partnership might look like. So I invite you to do that. I invite you to pray for those leaders who will be visioning next Saturday. There will be more town hall meetings, and there may be some new information. And so I certainly invite you to come to those as well. You know, it's not as though we're going to just bottle this up and spit out the same information. We might have some new information by the time more town halls roll around. So I invite you to continue to come to those. And I echo exactly what Pastor Kathy just mentioned. Please keep asking questions. Please do. We will have a frequently asked questions document that we are going to update as needed on a weekly basis. And so the newest information will be there. We want to make sure that you have everything that you need in order to, if the time comes that a decision has to be made, we want to make sure that you have all of the information that you need. So those are kind of the big next steps: town halls, FAQs, and pray for this vision together. Speaking of prayer, I'd like to ask our council chair, Leslie, to close us in prayer.
Okay. Father God, we just thank you for this time we've had this evening to meet as two groups, but one group, looking at this possibility for mission and reaching out into the community and bringing others to Jesus. We pray first for the group that will be meeting on Saturday. We ask that you surround them, let them feel your presence, and guide them in whatever there is information to glean, and just surround them with your loving arms. We pray for each one here and encourage that their questions will come to light, and that will help lead us into ways that we are to go by finding these answers. And we just pray for both congregations, and just keep this in the forefront of our minds, Lord, and just remind us that you are in charge and you truly will guide us and encourage us in the way that we should go. And please be with everyone as we leave this evening. Keep them safe and bless them. And we ask all this in your precious Son's name. Amen.
So thank you all for joining us this evening and for spending this time and for continuing to raise questions for us. Have a good night.
Thank you.